Good morning, everybody. It is Saturday morning, 9:05 in the morning, and you are listening to K-Talk Radio, 1640 AM, and this is the show, Utah Home Sweet Home. I am your host, Yoshi Shiraki, and today we're going to talk about, it's still January, and it's very appropriate to talk about goal setting. It's very appropriate to talk about how we're going to hit these goals. A lot of people have New Year's resolutions. We're still early in the game where people are still, I would say, doing a good job of working towards their goal, right? There's a statistic out there, and I don't know exactly what that stat is, but most people fall off their New Year's resolution. I think I want to say the first month, 30 days-ish, something around that time frame. And basically, there's a lot of reasons why this happens. And so one of them is primarily because they have a goal, but they don't have a map. They don't have a map in place on how to achieve that goal. So I'll give you an example. We discussed this a couple weeks back, and I got some good feedback from people who said I'd never heard it like that. That was a really good example of the importance of having a roadmap. Again, people have these goals, for whatever goal there may be, but they don't actually have a map in place that's going to help them get there. So here's the example that I shared. It was last month. It was before New Year's, right when we were getting ready to talk about setting goals and accomplishing these goals for the new year. And now we're in the new year. And since a lot of people probably did not hear that episode, I am going to share this particular example again just because how much good feedback we got on it. So here we go. Let's just say hypothetically you are in Toronto, Canada. Whether you live there, you're visiting there, or for whatever reason, you are in Toronto, Canada. And your goal is to go to this exact house in Panama City, okay? So you've got a buddy, he's like, hey man, there's a bunch of us, we're going down to Panama City, we're going to stay at a friend or a relative's house that he knows down there, and here's the address, 1234 Panama City, right? Now, your goal is Panama City, you want to go, you're for whatever reason in Toronto. Now, you could do this two ways. You could try and achieve this goal without a map, or you can try and achieve this goal with a map. And if you try to achieve this goal with a map versus without a map, which do you think you're going to have the better results with? One, you're probably going to get there with a map. Two, you're going to most likely get there in the least amount of time if you use a map that knows what it's doing. So for instance, if you were to go into Google, which is what I did, I went on to Google and I Googled the actual road, the path from Toronto, Canada to Panama City, then you're more likely to achieve that goal versus without a map. So let me give you an example. If you can't use a map, you're going to get in your car and you're in Toronto and you got to start heading south. You got to head into the U.S. and then from the U.S. you got to cross the border into Mexico and then a bunch of other countries just to get to Panama. And we're going to Panama City, right? And so what'll probably happen is you'll get in your car and head down a couple hours, maybe you get 4 hours into it, and then you realize you need gas. Now, you don't have a map, so you're guessing which freeway is the best freeway to jump on that's going to lead you most likely to Texas, right? Somehow you got to get to Texas, because Texas is where you're going to cross the border into Mexico. And so you've now driven 4 hours and you don't have a map. You get to the first gas station, and of course now you're wondering, oh man, I hope I'm going the right way. At least I'm hoping I'm going the most productive way, effective way. So you ask the gas station, hey, am I on the gas station, person, am I on the right way to Texas? Of course, you're going to get a lot of bad advice from people who have also not tried to achieve the same goal, right? And that happens all the time. Think about it. You set a goal, you want to do something, and you start asking your friends, you start asking your parents, you start asking your family, what do you guys think? How should I go about doing this? Yet they've never done it either. It's just like getting to the gas station and asking somebody, in Canada or just at the border of the Canadian-U.S. border, am I going in the right direction that's going to take me to Texas the fastest, right? And they're going to, you're going to have some people that say, I think you are. I think you should head on this freeway. It goes south. And so you get on it, and you drive another 4 hours, and you get to a gas station the next day and fill up gas, and that person informs you, well, yeah, you've come south, but you've come southeast. You should probably go southwest. So you may want to drive back to that first gas station and take the other freeway. So you just lost half a day, 4 hours in driving, and now you got to drive back another 4 hours, and now you've lost 8 hours. So you lost a whole day, right? And so now you're calculating these days because you need to get to Panama City before your friends leave. And so you're trying to get there in the most productive, quickest way possible. So obviously along your adventure of trying to achieve your goal, if you don't incorporate an accurate map that you can somehow research, in this case Google Earth or Google Maps was how I researched the path from Toronto to Panama City. If you can't research, and there's so much content right now on the internet that you could probably put together a pretty good map, but the best map is obviously going to be somebody who knows the exact route, like Google Earth or Google Maps, or somebody who's done this trip over and over and over, who's achieved this goal, right? Somebody who knows exactly the path to take to achieve this goal. So you don't want to get tons of bad advice along the way from people who have never even accomplished this goal themselves. You want to try and find people who've already accomplished the goal, and as Tony Robbins would say, model those people, copy those people, duplicate what those people have done, and follow their path. Okay, so this is pretty interesting because I thought, I'm a pretty adventurous person. If somebody gave me the challenge to get from Toronto to Panama City without any maps, and there was a purpose, there was an actual reason, it wasn't just for the sake of doing it, I'd be game to attempt it. I'm pretty adventurous. I think it'd be fun. And so I was just curious, though. I researched, how long does it actually take if you were to do this in the most accurate way and not making any wrong turns, not getting any bad advice, and just getting from Toronto, Canada to Panama City in the quickest amount of time. Well, turns out it's 88 hours. So you could break that 88 hours up into however many days you feel that you need to get in there. So, for example, if you wanted to get to Panama City in 11 days because your friends weren't going to show up for 11 days or for whatever reason your goal was 11 days, then if you drove accurately on a good map, not bad advice, then it would only take you 8 hours a day of driving to get there, right? So once you know your destination, once you know the approximate time it can take to get to that destination, because whether you've researched it or someone has told you because they've been on that path before, then now you can guesstimate a good plan and put together even better steps to make sure that you now hit your goal by a certain deadline, right? It's so common where people will set goals, but they don't have a deadline. I talk to people all the time. What's your goal? Well, I want to do this by the end of 2020. I want to do that, just random conversation. I want to do this. And then you're like, great, when are you thinking that you want to achieve that goal? Like, I don't know, that'd be a goal that I'd love to have. And then you follow up with, well, how much are you working on that goal every single day? And they're like, well, not every single day. I mean, I go to work, I come home, I got my kids, I got soccer, I got baseball, I got, whatever, dance, gymnastics. So I don't know, a couple weeks will go by before I even implement any steps. Well, now you have no idea when that goal will ever hit. You have no roadmap to even kind of fathom to get there. So the chances of those individuals achieving those goals, the statistics show, are incredibly slim. So let's dive into this here for a second. So just so you guys know, the route from Toronto to Panama City, now I'm going to give you state by state through the U.S., but then once we get into Mexico, rather than going state by state, because most of us aren't familiar with states in these different countries that I'm going to be naming, I'm just going to go country to country. But you can imagine, if you are driving through a different country that you've never driven in, it would probably be even that much more difficult to get to the next country south that you have to go through to get to Panama City. So, if you were in Toronto, Canada, and you wanted to drive down to Panama City, here is the state-by-state, country-to-country route that you would take. The very first state that you're going to hit as you cross the Canadian-U.S. border is Michigan. Okay, so some of you may have already known that because you happen to be good at geography, and you know that Michigan happens to be under Toronto in Canada. But for many of you, you probably didn't know that, and you had no idea Michigan would even be the first state on this great adventure of driving from Toronto to Panama City without a map? Well, from Michigan, then you go to Indiana. Okay, so then from Indiana, you go to Illinois. From Illinois, then you head into Missouri. Then from Missouri, you keep heading south to Arkansas. Then from Arkansas, you head to Texas. All right, how many people actually knew that you were going to go through Michigan, Indiana, Illinois, Missouri, Arkansas, and Texas in that order to get from Toronto to just Mexico, right? Probably not a lot of people. I sure didn't. I had to Google that and had to map that out. So I probably would have been making a lot of wrong turns, getting a lot of bad advice, wasting a lot of time, and prolonging the time that I'm actually going to achieve my goal. So thank goodness for maps. Once you hit Mexico, I'm not going to go state through state, but Mexico's huge. So think about how many states, and we didn't even go city to city. Think about all the cities through Michigan, Indiana, Illinois, Missouri, Arkansas, Texas that you're going to have to drive through as well. Well, once you get to Mexico, then you're going to drive all through Mexico, that whole entire country. Somehow you better figure out how to do that, right? If you don't have a map, hopefully you're good at knowing which way is south in the fastest way. Then you hit Guatemala. Okay, from Guatemala, then you're going to keep heading south to Honduras, right? Now you got to drive through Honduras to figure out how to get to El Salvador. Then through El Salvador, you're going to keep heading south to Nicaragua. From Nicaragua, you're going to keep heading south down to Costa Rica. Okay, again, we're not naming off the states and the cities. You got to figure out how to get through Costa Rica, then to finally get to the country of Panama. Now you've reached the country that we're going for, but now we got to reach the city of Panama City. So now from Panama, you got to figure out how to get to Panama City. And then once you're in Panama City, you have an address that someone's given you that's probably in Spanish. And now you have to get to that house, 1234 House Street in Panama City, right? Without a map. And I mean, think about, gosh, how many times do you drive just here in Salt Lake or in the state of Utah with, without a map? Somebody tells you, yeah, meet me at, 4200 South and 6700 East. And you think, those coordinates are generally easy. I'll drive there. But little do you know, the tracks, blocks the road, and then there's a river or a creek, and then you got to go around it, and now you're lost, and then you just pull up your Google Maps, and it takes you there in 2 seconds. Without a map for hitting your goal, it's very similar to drive from Toronto, Canada, all the way to Panama City without a map. It's incredibly difficult. Is it possible? Absolutely. People could do it. I could do it. I have a feeling, if like I said, if somebody challenged me and it was worth my while and I wasn't going to just do it for the waste of time, and there was a benefit to it, it would actually be kind of fun, probably with the right company. It might be boring by myself, but with the right company, that road trip would actually be kind of fun. And I feel that I could eventually do it, but man, I don't know if I could do it in 8 days, driving 11 hours a day, just like Google Maps suggests. I'd get lost so many times in so many countries that, who knows, it'd probably take me 30, 60 days to finally achieve this goal. Let's not even talk, we haven't even started talking about, of course, the other things that incorporate you being able to achieve this goal. One, you might be able to get from Toronto, Canada to Panama City, but the more time you spend driving the wrong direction, the more that increases the cost of achieving your goal, because now you've just wasted gas, right? Gas money, basically. You drove 4 hours one way, it was the wrong way, you got to come back those 4 hours, you've lost 8 hours of drive time, but you've also lost 8 hours of expenses. There was food, there was gas, you had to eat that day, it was, 1 day more than you intended to spend. And so without the proper roadmap, not only is achieving your goal difficult in a amount of time that you're hoping to do it, but it can be expensive. Right now, in my example, gas isn't that expensive. I mean, it's not the cheapest. It was much cheaper when I was in high school, but there are far more bigger mistakes that one can make trying to achieve a goal without a map, without a coach or a mentor who's actually done this before, who can guide you in the right direction. There's a handful of mistakes that I've made that were, I wish I could take back, that, were financially costly on flips, buying, properties that I didn't foresee, so many surprises pop up, and due to that, there were extra expenses that came up, and because of those extra expenses, we ended up on some of these. I shared the nightmare story last week. On this particular transaction, we ended up losing quite a bit of money, and so that mistake was very expensive. And without the proper roadmap, and I had a roadmap. That's the scary thing, is I had a roadmap when we did that flip. That wasn't a flip. That wasn't like my first or second flip. That's years of experience. It's just we didn't foresee all these, fabulous surprises that this house had for us. So without a roadmap, you can imagine, one, how long it's going to take, two, how expensive it's going to be. So it's so critical that now what's today? Let's see, January 18th. We're 2.5 weeks deep into January, and as we talked about before, a lot of you are probably still doing a good job of working on your New Year's resolution. Statistics show that most people are going to fall off approximately 30 days. I think it's 30 days. Don't quote me on it, but it was like around the first month, most people have already stopped doing their New Year's resolution. And again, that's mostly because it's just a goal. It's just a resolution. There's no plan. There's no roadmap. And so if you right now currently are pursuing your goal successfully, you haven't already fallen off, but you don't have a roadmap, my suggestion is to start researching either one, somebody who's already achieved this goal that you're trying to pursue, and ask them if they'd be open to coaching you or mentoring you. Pay them. I mean, depending on how big this goal is, how important this goal is for you, pay them. And two, start researching a good roadmap and plan on, off the internet. Like I said, there's so much information on the internet. And the reason you will have more success doing this is because more likely than not, if you have somebody who's taking you down the right path, or you research the right path on the internet, you've done a lot of homework, done a lot of research, figured out that, just like I did on Google Maps, this is probably the best route to go, you're more likely to keep hitting small steps of success, right? If you keep hitting small steps of success, it keeps you motivated to continue to press on. However, if you keep making wrong turns, keep heading the wrong direction, keep getting bad advice, and keep having to go back from where you came, losing time, eventually you're going to get discouraged, and 1 month into your goals, you're going to slowly, or maybe quickly, depending on who you are, start the process of no longer pursuing it. And before you know it, you're just not even pursuing your goal anymore, your New Year's resolution. And your New Year's resolution now becomes next year's New Year resolution, because it was last year's resolution as well. Because eventually you want to get that goal, but you don't have a map to it. So it's a goal that you end up procrastinating, because you can't figure out how to do it. You can't figure out how to get there. And that is typically, statistics show, the fact that you don't have a map, the fact that you haven't written out this plan, statistics will show that you will eventually stop pursuing your goal, because your activity toward your movement, your momentum towards the final finish line becomes more and more, mentally challenging. You don't feel like you're even making progress. So eventually you start to stop. So definitely put together a goal, put together a map, and research this, figure out the fastest way to get there, and you're more likely going to be able to keep the momentum, keep the progress going. And I promise you, as long as your progress and momentum keep going in the right direction, you're just not going to stop until you officially hit your goal. You start the process of stopping when your momentum stops, because you basically don't have the greatest roadmap in front of you, or a coach who's telling you the perfect direction to go. So get that, we're still early in January, get those things lined up. I want you to be able to keep pushing forward with progress, with momentum, so that you can achieve these goals. So many of my friends that I have come on this show who are winners, let's put it that way. They're winners. They're in their industry killing it. And when I talk to the majority of them about goals, and I say I talk to the majority of them, it's just that I haven't talked to the rest of them about goals, but the ones that I've talked about goals, They all have their goals written down, and they all have a plan on how to get there. And if they don't have a plan on how to get there, they have a coach or a mentor that they're paying how to get there. And I don't know if you remember, a few weeks back we had Matt Atkinson on the show, and he's the perfect example because he had Garrett White, Tony Robbins, strategic coach, I can't remember the guy's name, Keith Cunningham, and I think there was Tom Hopkins. I mean, this guy pays 5 to 6 coaches regularly. I mean, I just thought of another individual. I can't think of his name. Oh, shoot. Anyways, he's got 6 to 7 coaches off the top of my head that I can think of. Can't remember all of their names. That he pays yearly throughout the year. I mean, think about that. Anything that you wanted to progress. Let's say it was let's use sports because that's typically where people get coaches. Let's just say that you wanted to become a better basketball player all around, right? And so think about this. If you hired a coach who's just specialized in dribbling, right? Like be able to dribble perfectly, creatively, so that nobody knew what you were doing. Super, I mean, I don't know if you guys ever watched the and one basketball players, but the way they dribble is not traditional NBA dribbling. It's incredibly creative and difficult to guard, right? But they're dribbling specialists. So let's say you got a coach, and not that you want to dribble that way, but it wouldn't hurt to learn how to dribble perfectly in many different ways, but you just hired a coach just to help you dribble. Then you had another coach who taught you I've got a friend who has literally a coach just to help his vertical. So they do certain workouts in the gym, leg workouts, because their primary focus is increasing his vertical, right? So now you have a vertical jumping coach because you're playing basketball and you want to be able to jump higher. Then you get a strength coach because you want to also be a little bit stronger. Then you get a free throw specialist coach, someone who just specializes in free throws. Then you get a shooting coach in general, shoots anywhere, 3-point. If you had all these specialists that you worked with every week, right? Maybe not all 5 the same day, but maybe 1 a day, your basketball game would increase dramatically. I mean, let's just face it. They're teaching you the exact way that you need to be doing things correctly to achieve the best result, and you're doing this with 5 different people who specialize in those niches. That's Matt Atkinson, for example, right? He understands that he has high standards. He has high goals. He's a high achiever, and in order to achieve those things, he needs to have a lot of coaches. So basically, just kind of wrapping this coach theory or this coach analogy up, if you don't know how to get where you're going, which is hypothetically, Matt knows where he wants to go. He has an idea of how to get there, but he doesn't have the actual map. Then you're going to hire a coach or research it, of course, but sometimes it's just faster to pay somebody to tell you than spend months and months and months researching it online, right? Now, of course, Google Maps was 1, 2, 3, but that's just driving from Toronto, Canada down to Panama City. So if your research is simple like that on the internet, then hey, do some research on the internet. It's less expensive. But if your goal is a little bit more, what's the word? It takes a little bit more than just pulling up a Google search, then that's probably a good idea to hire a coach, right? For example, real estate investing. And so we're going to get into that, some ideas on setting goals for real estate investing here. You're not going to want to go away. We're going to take a commercial break, though, first. And then when we come back, we're going to talk about putting kind of a roadmap together to do your first investment. Maybe you want to flip houses. Maybe you want to buy a rental property. And we'll dive into the pros and cons of both of those as soon as we get back from our commercial break. So, Utah Home Sweet Home, and I am your host, Yoshi Shiraki. Today, we are talking about goal setting. We're still early in the month of January, where a lot of you are still on the progress, still progressing in your New Year's resolution, in your goals, and we're talking about how to sustain that momentum, how to keep that going. We said this earlier, the statistics show that most people quit, I think it's the first month, within 30 days-ish, pursuing their New Year's resolution, right? And there's so many reasons why. We talked about that already, but the statistics also show that most of the time it's because most people don't have a map on how to get where they want to go. So due to not having a map to get where they want to go, they end up going in the wrong direction a lot of times, or they get bad advice because they're asking people who haven't also achieved that same goal. So the advice is always not the best advice, and due to that, they lose momentum, they lose progress, and with losing progress, they lose steam and desire and motivation, and before you know it, you have dropped off pursuing your New Year's resolution. So definitely important to get your roadmap, put a roadmap in play, and again, if you're just tuning in now, you can listen to how to do that, just some ideas on how to put together a roadmap. We talked about a roadmap, when you're taking a road trip. So you can follow us on social media, and we replay these, we capture this content, and it's available for you to re-listen to, whether it's YouTube or SoundCloud. So you can definitely re-listen to or check out those ideas. So now, we're going to talk about real estate here. We're going to talk about, let's start off with rentals, for example. Rentals are probably easier to get into, to get started in, if you haven't done any real estate investing and you're considering, should I flip houses first or buy rentals houses? I would say probably buying rentals is going to be a little bit easier because the flexibility for mistake is bigger. So if you were to buy a fix and flip, hypothetically, and you purchased it wrong, meaning there's so many different ways that you can purchase a fix and flip wrong. One, you determine what you can sell it for, and that's inaccurate. And because it's inaccurate and it's less than what you think, when you go to turn around and sell it, you're actually not going to sell it for as much as you thought. You're going to potentially lose money there. So one, you overpay on the property because you think that you can sell it for more. But unfortunately, mistake number one, you overpaid on a property you can't sell for as much, and now you lose money. So there's one way of buying it wrong. The second way of buying it wrong is, let's just say you get it accurate on what you could sell it for. So you're like, I think I could sell it for this. And let's just say that's accurate. However, you feel that you could fix the house up in 3 months for X amount of dollars. And that house ends up taking you 6 months and an increased X amount of dollars. So now you're more money into the property, you're longer into it, and the reason why longer is expensive is because most likely you're probably using some hard money loan to finance this particular purchase, and that hard money loan is a very expensive monthly payment. So the longer you have this, the more increased your monthly costs. Then you also have utilities, all the holding costs that come with fixing and flipping, plus now you underestimated the repair budget. And now you've gone over on that repair budget, and the next thing you know, you sell it for what you thought you could, but because you spent more on the fix-up itself and you held it longer, you lose money, right? And a lot of people that end up making, these similar mistakes on a fix and flip end up refinancing out of the hard money loan, or if they already had a conventional loan, then they just keep it because they don't want to lose the money. So they keep it as a rental. But now you're a landlord on accident, right? And now your money's tied up into that particular property, so it prohibits you from going out and doing another fix and flip. In many cases, depending on who you are, you might have extra cash that you have available to you that you can just carry on. But a lot of people will then keep these properties as rentals unexpectedly and on accident because there's just less forgiveness on fix and flips. However, with a rental, let's just say you hypothetically overpay a little bit, or you over improve and spend a little bit more than you thought. Well, you're not selling this anyway. Your initial investment in here was long-term anyway, and time heals all wounds, right? So if you overpaid for a home, I actually had a friend who was on this show. He ended up purchasing a fourplex, and this is the perfect example. Really respected investor, invited him on the show, and this is a conversation outside of our show. He ended up finding a fourplex that was for sale in the perfect area for him, whatever area that was. I didn't even ask him, but he just said the perfect area, right? And he wanted to own this fourplex super bad based off of its location. And I said, oh, that's fantastic. I said, how did you find it? Did you get a good deal? And he said, well, I paid market value for it. And I was like, oh, that's cool. He's like, yeah, because pay market value for it, I still am positive. I'm not negative, I'm not even, I'm still positive cash flow. Not maybe as much as I would have liked being able to buy an undervalued fourplex. I paid market value for it, but I'm positive. Or I'm positive cash flow, right? So I'm positive on the monthly mortgage. He goes, but the reality is, this is the perfect area. So I could really care less because time heals all wounds. And in 30 years, when this fourplex is free and clear, this fourplex alone can support the cash flow from this fourplex alone, once it's free and clear, can support my lifestyle at that particular time. In 30 years from now, 30 years from now, his home will be free and clear. The one he lives in will be free and clear. Everything will be paid off. Most likely his kids will have moved on. His expenses on a daily basis 30 years from now, he anticipates, are going to be minimal. He won't have a house payment anymore. He won't have a car payment anymore unless he goes and buys another car 30 years from now. He anticipates that his lifestyle 30 years from now is going to be a free and clear lifestyle. And he has lots of investments. And if all those investments are also free and clear, then he's going to live a really, really lavish retirement. But the fact that his example was this fourplex alone would be able to support his lifestyle. So he's like, time heals all wounds. Yeah, I didn't get the best deal on it, but I don't care because I got the area that I wanted. And in 30 years, who cares what I paid for it 30 years ago, because now it's free and clear and I'm loving life because this cash flow from this one unit supports my lifestyle, right? That's a very good example of how lenient buy and holds can be if you overbuy, over-improve. Who cares? Because you're going to hold it a long time anyway. In 30 years when it's free and clear, you're not going to worry about that anymore. And in fact, there are a lot of investors that, we had another investor, I believe it was 2 weeks ago on the show, and he had brought up a good comment. He said, if I look at most of the houses that I purchased the first couple years when I became a real estate investor, buy and hold, those first few investments, knowing what I know now, if I look back, I probably wouldn't have bought them because I just know more on a better way to buy. Back then, he didn't know a better way to buy. He wasn't buying creatively. He bought traditionally, and he bought, probably full price, and there wasn't a lot of appreciation. He didn't get a great deal. And so he says, yeah, looking back now, knowing what I know now, and I can find good deals, I probably wouldn't have bought any of those. But you know what? I still have them all anyway because they're significantly paid down. The mortgage payment stayed the same, more or less. I mean, taxes and insurance can raise it at a very minimal price, but rents have gone up dramatically. So his cash flow's improved. Time heals all wounds. So I would say rentals is definitely going to be a more lenient way to get started. So if you're going to start to do rentals, then a couple of things that you want to think about, right? I met an individual a couple days ago at the Utah Valley Real Estate Investing Association. Now, as of 2020, just to make a little announcement here, for those of you who don't know what the Utah Valley Real Estate Investing Association, there's several. There's 3 big real estate investing associations here in the Salt Lake area. You got Utah Valley Real Estate Investing Association, and we call those REIAs, Real Estate Investing Association, REIA, REIA. And UV stands for Utah Valley, so UV REIA. If you go to uvrea.com, you can see what I'm talking about. There's also SLREIA, and that's SLREIA, which stands for Salt Lake Real Estate Investing Association. And then there's Utah REIA, and I believe it's utahrea.org, not .com. So if I'm mistaken, it's .com, forgive me. But Jeff Deering owns Utah REIA, SLREIA, Salt Lake Real Estate Investing Association. The president is Randall Wall, and then the president of UV REIA is Matt Atkinson. Now, the reason I'm sharing that is I happen to, as of this year, 2020, I was asked to be the vice president of UV REIA, so Utah Valley Real Estate Investing Association. So a couple nights ago, we had our Utah Valley Real Estate Investing Association meeting. Now, I highly, highly recommend, if you're thinking about getting involved in real estate, start attending one of these REIAs. It's very inexpensive. It's an annual membership of like $120, $100 or something like that. It's like almost 10 to 15 bucks a night, right? You go to the movies, and by the time you buy your drink and popcorn, you've spent more on that movie, but you didn't gain any knowledge on how to buy real estate. UV REIA, SLREIA, Utah REIA are phenomenal organizations that you can get some very inexpensive education. And so while at UV-RIA, and if you do go to UV-RIA, sorry, get back on track here a second. If you do go to the Utah Valley Real Estate Investing Association, which we meet in Pleasant Grove, I am the vice president. Come introduce yourself to me. I'd love to meet you. So check out UV-REIA, UV-RIA, UVREIA.com, and then you can see when we meet. We have luncheons. In fact, actually, for those of you who are interested, the February luncheon, we have Josh Romney, who's our speaker, who's coming to speak. It's a luncheon, it's in the afternoon, and I can't remember exactly. We're in the process of finding potentially a new location, a new restaurant where we're going to hold our RIA meetings, just because the old place that we were holding it is going through a renovation, so we might be moving. So check the website. I'm not sure where we're doing our luncheon, but that should be very entertaining and very interesting to hear from Josh Romney. So come check out UV-RIA. And again, if you want to learn how to start doing this stuff, this is a great first step in your roadmap of investing. Okay, so I met this individual who, and I shouldn't say I met him for the first time. We went to high school together a long, long time ago, and we reconnected at UV-RIA. And he is now getting into the investing game. I shouldn't say now, he's already started. He's got some investments already. And he's very smart in that he's attending these RIAs because it's, as I mentioned, a good step in your roadmap to get educated. Now, at these UV-RIAs, I'll meet a lot of new investors. We get a lot of new people who come for the very first time. They want to start doing real estate investing, but they don't necessarily know what they want to invest in. They don't know if they want to do fix and flips. They don't know if they do rentals. We talked about rentals is probably the more forgiving of the two to get started in. But here are some points that you're going to want to think about. Do you want your rental to be a single family? Do you want your rental to be possibly your first investment, let's just say a duplex, or maybe even a triplex or a fourplex? And here's why I bring this up. That individual that I met at UV-RIA, that we went to high school together, he loves his job. He makes great money at what he currently does, and he doesn't want to do real estate investing as a full-time employment. So for people like that, who don't want to commit to a career change, I've got a friend who's an attorney. I've got a friend who's a dentist. They make phenomenal money in their careers. They love what they do. They want to buy real estate, but they don't necessarily want to do real estate as a living. Then, in those situations, they might not have the desire necessarily to make this a living and go out and buy, like Matt Atkinson, who does this for a living, 100 plus doors. Matt Atkinson currently has over 100 rental doors and continually buying because this is what he does every single day. But the dentist, the doctor, the attorney, these individuals that don't do this every day, who don't have a desire to do it every day, they just, in the example of my other friend who came in, might just want the fourplex. They want to buy that fourplex today in the perfect area, even if it's not the best deal, but they love the area because they know 30 years from now, and I think this fourplex that he purchased was in Sugar House. So for those of you who know the Sugar House area, you know that Sugar House is booming, hot, and expensive. The rents there are high. The home prices are high. 30 years from now, can you imagine how much rent is going to come in from all four of these units on the fourplex? That's why he's so confident that that fourplex alone will be able to sustain his lifestyle once it's free and clear, and his lifestyle's free and clear. So you might be that individual who's like, yeah, I love what I do. You know, I want to own real estate. This is interesting. I don't want to work forever. And even and for those people who do, you know, my dad is somebody who wants to work forever. But I've known people who want to work forever. That they love what they do. It's their golf. Like going to work for my dad is like, because he hypothetically could retire. He has friends that are retiring, but they go play golf, he goes to work, his work is his golf, right? And he loves what he does and he'll do it forever. But for some people, they love what they do, but maybe their body at some point won't allow them to do it anymore. And then they're forced into retiring in the sense of like not doing anything because their body's incapable of doing it, right? So at that point, if your body's incapable of generating an income, then hopefully you've set yourself up in a place where you've got now rental income or real estate that you can liquidate to basically fulfill your retirement or the rest of your life. So things to think about. If you're getting in the game to do this for a living, then you may have a different roadmap than the guy who's doing this, who doesn't want to quit their living and basically do it for retirement, right? I do this for a living. I love real estate because of the flexibility it gives me. I had another career earlier in my life. I lived in, and some of you have already probably heard me say this on the show before, but I lived in New York City, born and raised here in Salt Lake City, went to high school, graduated from high school, then moved away from Utah, actually moved to London, England to go to school, but then came back to America and went to New York City to implement what I learned, which was I was a hairstylist to the stars, basically, the rich and famous. I don't know if you know these names: Matthew Broderick, Joan Osborne, Anderson Cooper. I was Anderson Cooper's personal hairstylist for over 6 years in the CNN office. And this was earlier, I did this for 18, 19 years, early in my life, right? This was a career that I did when I was much younger. And then when I relocated back to Utah, moved back to Utah, I lost my whole clientele, of course, of hairstylists, of hair clients. And because I would have to either start over as a hairstylist, a hairdresser, or just start over, I thought, you know what, let me do something that I started researching different things that seem entertaining. I had already started investing in rentals. I wasn't really doing fix and flips when I first got into the game. I started buying rentals. I was cutting hair, making a comfortable living, saving money, putting down payments, and buying traditionally, kind of just not creatively, not the way we do today, but buying traditionally. And so basically, I thought, you know what, I really like this concept and idea of real estate. And we started flipping houses. This is actually before we moved to Utah. Started flipping houses, got into the flipping after doing rentals. And then when we moved to Utah, I thought, you know what, because I was flipping on the side, right? So I was still a hairstylist. I was flipping on the side. Then we moved to Utah. I thought, you know what, let me carry this over and continue doing it. What I realized is the flexibility that real estate gave me, because I didn't have to go, hypothetically punch in every day and in my case, cut 10 clients a day and then go home. I could go to my kids' swimming lessons and then do work after, and because I'm not necessarily needed at certain times. I do have responsibilities that need to get done, but there's typically very flexible deadlines on these. So I ended up finding that real estate was something that I'm passionate about, loved, because of the flexibility it gave me. So I dove into it, basically because I moved back from New York City to Salt Lake City, had to come up with a new career, and I thought, well, I could have stayed in the old career, but I would have had to build a brand new business and new hair clientele. I figured, you know what, let's just start over in something completely different. But for those of you who don't want to do that, then your play may be to just buy the fourplex or 2 fourplexes, depending on how lavish your lifestyle you want it to be, depending on your income. Then for some of you, your first investment property might just be a single family residence because of your ability to qualify for a particular loan, right? So depending on how much loan you're able to borrow or partner with, maybe if you partner with somebody, you can buy more investment. So you can, instead of buying a single family resident, you might be able to buy a duplex or a triplex. For some of you, it might be the area. You're looking for the most economical entry-level price. Then you might be buying investment property, let's say, in neighborhoods like Glendale or Magna. In the case where my buddy wanted to own in Sugar House, and again, he was comfortable paying market value because it wasn't something that he needed to make him money today. This is going to be a 30-year play. Well, if you've got the ability to get a loan at that particular price, and that's the game you want to play, then that could dictate also where you want to be. So lots of things to think about. Now, after you've thought about, okay, well, yeah, I don't want to quit my job, or I do want to quit my job. I want this to be a career change for flexibility in my time, or I don't want to because I love being a dentist or a doctor or an attorney or whatever. Then, obviously, your next step after you figure out where you feel you want to own your properties, and see, it depends on, again, going back to my buddy who owns the fourplex in Sugar House, it's not that he doesn't need any cash flow to live off of, right? If you're looking to start generating some income off of your rental properties as quickly as possible, your cash flow is probably going to be bigger in a more economical price point Now keep in mind, it's probably still minimal, but if you're thinking, I want to live off of that cash flow as quickly as possible so I can quit my job, then that's another item to think about, right? Or if you're the guy who's like, I'm never going to quit being an attorney, so I don't care if it's in Sugar House and I wait 30 years till it's paid off. But now you need to think about those items, and then you want to then reach out to a loan officer or some type of mortgage broker or bank and get an idea of what you're qualified for. Because again, let's just say hypothetically you're looking in more economical places. Let's just use Glendale for an example. Once you know your buying power, because you've now communicated with a lender, you might have thought that you were originally going to buy a single family home in Glendale, but maybe your buying power is a little bit more than you thought, and now you're buying a duplex in Glendale instead, right? Maybe now you're going into multifamily instead of single family. So something to think about as well. And the only way to start thinking about that roadmap, because then that leads you to a whole nother roadmap, is obviously you need to now understand your buying power. So once you understand your buying power, then now this gives you the idea of what it is that you want to invest in. Okay, well, wow, I thought I was going to invest in Glendale because I didn't think my buying power would be so much, but maybe now I will invest in a different neighborhood, or maybe it's still Glendale. I got a lot of friends that invest in the more economical price points because there's, well, right now rent is super easy anywhere, but the economical price points, one, there's advantages. One, they're super easy to rent because affordability is becoming a problem in Salt Lake City, and two, they're super easy to liquidate when that time comes because they're the affordable price points, because affordability is becoming a problem here in Salt Lake City, which is good and bad at the same time, depends on what side of the fence you are on. We talked about this a few weeks ago that Salt Lake City just made, in 2019, for the very first time, they made the top 25 list of most expensive, unaffordable, I should say, most unaffordable housing markets in the nation. Good and bad, right? Good and bad. Good if you're a landlord and an investor who has these properties, because one, that means the value of your investments have gone up, and that's what we want when we invest. Is, as investors, we want our investments to go up in value. Two, if the housing market's becoming unaffordable, then that typically means less people can afford, which means most likely they're going to be a renter. And if they're a renter, then, and you're an investor and you're a landlord, you're going to have more opportunities to find a good tenant, right? So good on that side if you are already an investor or you know how to buy creatively and you're purchasing more and more, the more expensive, the more unaffordable Salt Lake becomes. It's initially expensive to get into it, but if you're buying creatively, buying the right way, then it's actually an advantage to you because now these people that can't afford homes become your tenants. It's obviously bad for the people who are now trying to become first-time home buyers, right? Because now it's becoming unaffordable. Never in history has Salt Lake City ever been on the most unaffordable lists in the nation until 2019. Now, keep in mind, here's the good thing the good thing about that is that we're number 25. We just broke the list. We're in last place. So hypothetically, we're still affordable. We're just now in the top 25 unaffordable. But in that top 25, we're still the most affordable. So it's a phenomenal time to consider purchasing investment properties here in Salt Lake because we're probably only just going to keep climbing up that list, right? And if you have gotten onto the list, think about all those people that, I have a couple friends that moved out to Los Angeles 15, 20 years ago, graduated from school, work took them out to LA, they bought an affordable house, now they're sitting on, $1.5–2 million just in their home, incredible appreciation and unaffordable market. That's Salt Lake's destined for something like that in the future. I'm not saying it's going to happen tomorrow, but potentially 20 years from now, these homes that are 400,000 or 500,000 going to be close to $1 million, if not over that. And so lots of people who purchased in Los Angeles 20 years ago, even though Los Angeles 20 years ago at the time was expensive, wish they would have bought more expensive real estate 20 years ago in Los Angeles because it's so much more today, if that makes sense. So definitely some good pros and cons, but it's definitely, in my personal opinion, a good time to start putting together this business plan, if this is the thing that you're looking to do, if you're really interested in getting involved into real estate, then my suggestion is you really want to definitely start putting a plan together, putting a play together as far as what you're going to do to start picking up some real estate here in Salt Lake, because 20, 30 years from now when that piece of real estate is all free and clear and you're now in your retirement phase, you're going to love that you took this action. You're going to love that you did something like that to set yourself up for some cash flow. Okay, so on that note, I want to thank you all for listening. Again, this is K-Talk Radio, 1640 AM. This is the show, Utah Home Sweet Home. I am your host, Yoshi Shiraki. We are here every Saturday from 9 to 10, and I hope you all have a spectacular rest of the day.